Melinda Gates, the ex-wife of Microsoft founder Bill Gates, says that her former husband is going to have to answer for the allegations made against him in the Epstein files. Bill Gates' name shows up multiple times in the most recent batch of documents released by the DOJ.
In one email, Epstein appears to accuse Bill of needing medication to treat a sexually transmitted disease. Epstein suggests Bill actually wanted to give the medication to his wife without her knowing. It's absolutely disgusting. Here was Melinda talking about the allegations.
For me, it's personally hard whenever those details come up, right? Because brings back memories of some very, very painful times in my marriage, but I have moved on from that. I purposely pushed it away and I moved on. I'm in a really unexpected, beautiful place in my life. So whatever questions remain there of what I can't even begin to know all of it, those questions are for those people and for even my ex-husband. They need to answer to those things, not me.
Bill and Melinda were married in 1994 and they divorced in 2021. 3 years after the divorce, Melinda left her role as co-chair of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. A spokesperson for Bill Gates calls the recent claims made about him, quote, absolutely absurd and completely false. A statement shared with The Hill says, quote, the only thing these documents demonstrate is Epstein's frustration that he did not have an ongoing relationship with Gates, and the lengths he would go to entrap and defame.
The New York Times reports that beginning in 2011, Bill Gates went to Epstein's Manhattan townhouse multiple times to discuss the possibility of raising funds for the Gates Foundation.
And since Epstein's death in 2019, Bill has repeatedly expressed regret over his decision to associate with Epstein, but maintains that the two did not have a real business relationship or a friendship.
Lots to get into here.
Yeah.
Really disgusting accusations against Bill Gates. Now, to be clear, these are not messages between Bill Gates and Epstein. These are messages Epstein sent to himself.
As a draft, seemingly, or something like that.
So where it's basically like he's not getting what he wants out of Bill Gates anymore, and he's like, but I know that he needed this. He wanted to get medicine for sleeping with a prostitute or something of that nature. Again, that's not confirmation it happened. That's not Bill Gates saying it, so you got to be a little careful. It seems pretty clear that Bill Gates, we've already knew this before these files, that Bill Gates is one of those figures who continued to have way too much contact and friendship with Bill Gates well past the point in which there's any plausible deniability for awareness of what he did, and that's bad judgment on his part. Maybe it's as bad as it is now. I wouldn't put it past anyone to want to ask Bill Gates questions about this. What he was contemplating in the subject of what we just read is pretty awful and maybe even criminal, frankly. Giving somebody medicine against their will.
Oh, right.
He wanted to give it to her because he worried he'd infected her or something of that nature.
Did he want to give the medicine to her? Did he want to take it without her knowledge? He wanted to give it to her?
I think so, yeah.
Oh.
To make sure he hadn't
passed it. That seems very dodgy.
Again, we don't know that any of this is true.
Right.
It could be secondhand. It could be Epstein recalling it in that way or just wanting to threaten him with something that isn't true. Look, we know Epstein's game. He was himself a sexual predator, and then he had all these famous and wealthy friends whose influence he collected and who he sought power over. Now, there isn't as much as people would like evidence in all these new disclosures of his famous friends being complicit in the sex with underage people part of it, but they're certainly around the island and talking to him all the time, and people like Steve Bannon and Noam Chomsky and Stacy Plaskett and Bill Gates and many others having ongoing relationship with Noam Chomsky, advising him on what he should say to avoid responsibility for the things he's done, look very, very bad, and so on and so forth, right up until the end. So that's all very bad and all very damning and should color our perception of these people. There's not the smoking guns a lot of partisans, however, we're looking for in terms of the Clintons or Trump or others. Nothing.
Yeah,
nothing.
Well, so first of all, I mean, in terms of Bill Gates, there's no criminal allegation against him, and he obviously denies wrongdoing, as do many of these other people. Right. And the issue which you raised about judgment in relation to Epstein is a much more salient one. Many of these people retained contact with Epstein after the initial conviction. He pleaded guilty.
And Bill
in the
Gates has
case.
sought this massive global role in being an expert, a moral authority on some level for public health and for a set of policies that I've criticized and other hosts on Rising have criticized. Our viewers were very suspicious of, involving compulsory vaccination, compulsory all sorts, a more global perspective on public health, cooperation with international health authorities, who I think are sometimes wrong. So I'm critical of all that. I think if you seek that role for yourself, I'm not saying you have to be like morally unimpeachable, but maybe more morally unimpeachable than he comes across in these documents.
Yeah, and I mean, I do think, and we may slightly diverge here, the release of the documents, which I wanted and am supportive of, it has, I think, informed the public about things that are of real substantive value, even if they don't rise to the level of criminality. There has been a sort of corollary information that has come out that has been of genuine public interest. I don't want to divert too much into British politics, but the former British ambassador to the US, Peter Mandelson.
It seems to be having a bigger impact on your government than ours.
Yeah, I mean, Mandelson is in enormous trouble. One reason being he appears, unless this email is somehow faked, he appears to have told Epstein, when Mandelson was in government years ago, about very sensitive details about the British government's plans. You can't do that, to anybody, not least someone who is of a nationality other than the government in which you're serving. So those kinds of details, I think, are very, very important. And the judgment question does come up, and the general sense of a kind of circle or cabal of people who are all in league with each other in a kind of cozy, friendly way, even if that does not rise to the level that every member of that circle is therefore culpable of crimes, which clearly they're not.
Yeah, that's all true. I do think it requires a degree of nuance, and I have a piece in the Free Press today expressing some reservations I have about these disclosures. I'll probably cobble together a radar on this tomorrow. I certainly think we've learned noteworthy things, and I supported the release of the files because this is an exceptional case of high public interest and a correct perception that the law enforcement aspect of this was mishandled and that there are things we don't know and the public needs to know. So I get it. That said, I mean, there's a reason they don't usually just release investigative files. I mean, releasing the emails themselves is one thing, so we can read them all and decide for ourselves. But they're releasing photos where they put, black boxes over people's. Well, you can make that look more suggestive than it is. I saw everyone going nuts on this longtime friend of Bill Gates, there's a photo of him and these three children. He's got his hands on one of the underage people's legs, and it's all black boxes. It's his own kids. It's him and his wife with his own kids. And again, that went super viral. Oh my God, here's one we got, one of the pedophiles.
Yeah.
Like, you have no idea what you're talking about. And then and I saw again the idea trending that Jeffrey Epstein introduced Melania and Trump to each other, and they said, oh, it's confirmed, it's in the Epstein files. Well, no, there's an investigative record where someone told an investigator that. So that document exists. But that doesn't mean that's true. That's just what that person told that investigator. That account has been contradicted by Melania and Trump. You can take that for what it's worth. Also, I think by the timeline, and they sued the Daily Beast and Michael Wolff to have it taken down, and they won. Or they got them to agree to take it down. So just because that information is in the Epstein files, that doesn't make this in the Epstein files is now becoming that doesn't mean found guilty of sexual misconduct, or even that it's true. And I'm wary of like a witch hunt mentality that's developing around these things.
Yeah, I mean, I am not deaf to that argument, and it is certainly, I think, something that people in the media have to be responsible about when there is often very lurid but very uncorroborated information publicly released. I do think that the Epstein matter was so exceptional and so unusual and involved so many very powerful people in politics and outside of politics that the public appetite was quite understandable for greater disclosure. the public suspicion of a cover-up was very high, and it is therefore useful to release as much as you can to try to ameliorate that issue.
Yeah, I hear that, and I am not saying I disagree with that necessarily, but I think we ought to maybe very much keep to the idea that this is going to be the exception. I think if this starts becoming the rule, that we have
to release everything in every investigation.
Every file you have on this person, even if it's uncorroborated. You know, in an era of weaponized law enforcement both ways, this seems like it could cause a breakdown of trust in our society.
Well, sure.
This is a special case. I agree.
Yeah, no, it is a special case. I take your broader point, not least because your broader point would give a license to anyone who has a enmity or vendetta towards someone to just make.
Right.
It then encourages fictitious allegations, basically. I'm not saying that's happening in the Epstein case. I think it's exceptional for all sorts of ways, but I take the broader point.
Late night host Bill Maher and MS Now's Joe Scarborough got into a heated argument while discussing Representative Ilhan Omar on Maher's show.
This follows comments from President Trump where he ripped Omar for being too critical of America and suggested she may have staged last week's incident where she was sprayed with vinegar by a man in the middle of her town hall. Maher denounced President Trump's criticisms of Omar along those lines, but he did say he at least partially agreed with the president that the Congresswoman seems to only have negative things to say about America. Let's watch.
There is a kernel of truth in that somebody comes from a country like Somalia, and then it just seems like she does not have any perspective on the country that she joined here, and never seems to have anything good to say.
We don't think that way
about America.
The second she came here, my family's probably been here for 400 years. The day she came to America and raised her hand and took the oath, she's every bit as much of an American as you are, or me.
And I would say this of every other American. Have some perspective.
Maher continued, pressing his point about Omar's perspective on the U.S.
What I'm saying is, have some perspective about this country, not just her, but yes, I mean, if she's from a country like Somalia, which is a country you wouldn't live in.
Right.
Okay, well, just be honest about it. Instead of, it just seems like it's always completely negative about this country.
Scarborough then flipped the argument around, claiming that Republicans have spent too much time complaining about the state of the country, especially back when Joe Biden was the president. That led to this exchange with former Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Donald Trump talks about how the American dream is dead. No, it's not. That's the American dream's not dead. We're stronger militarily. We're stronger economically. We're stronger culturally. We're stronger with soft power. We're stronger in every single way.
I don't know about that. Ask Gen Z.
Yeah.
They're not feeling so good.
But I don't see. Okay, so now you're talking badly about America. How dare you do that? I think it's a great country.
No, I said ask Gen Z.
Well, would Gen Z rather live in America or Somalia?
I'm just saying the American dream is harder to realize.
I really like this back and forth.
It was an interesting discussion. I mean, I agree with Bill Maher. I think he wasn't saying that Ilhan Omar has no right to criticize the country. Like Scarborough's correct that she enjoys First Amendment rights, and that's fine. And you should not feel unwilling to criticize the country. I think there's a subtle difference, but an important difference between criticizing the country or like America as an idea and just criticizing the government of America. I'm very critical of America's government, whether Democrats or Republicans are in charge. I'm very critical of big government and the things our government does. That's different than criticizing America, the people, the idea, the philosophy behind it, which is great and good and should lead the world. That's different than the government. And, you know, I guess I don't parse every single comment Ilhan Omar has ever made. Right. Sometimes her criticism does evince this is a very kind of woke or identity-based criticisms of America as a nation rather than just criticism of the government. So I share Bill Maher's, this is what rubs me the wrong way about her, but no, she can say whatever she wants.
So America, to me, that's like a cop-out, what you just said, because America is a government that America is a place that's run by government, by leadership. So when you criticize the history of the country, you're never criticizing like the land that we're standing on. You're criticizing the policies that were put in place by the people historically that you continue to push forward as we get older as a country and how we can do better. And she's allowed to criticize the government and leadership and the way that our federal laws have been implemented and how we can do better. So but it's not like she's the nation. No, the nation was built up by leaders that she disagrees with. Sometimes she can call historically like, hey, this was racist. That's why we had civil rights. Let's move forward, move on and change
Okay, but then
laws.
that does make me go, but Somalia is a failed state and has been one for hundreds of years. And
that's why she lives in America now. But when she's here,
and when she talk about how bad Somalia is, see, I agree. It makes me okay.
Mind you, I haven't combed through all her statements.
Yeah.
Perhaps she has, but the president likes to have this collective punishment idea, which I constantly hear Ilhan Omar pushing back against, is the fact that if a Somalian in Minnesota did something wrong, we should indict the entire community of Somalians in the entire country. And so she's constantly pushing back on the statements that the president makes that wants to collectively punish all people descending from one country. And I think that is wildly inappropriate. And so if she seems like she's criticizing when the president Trump has been in leadership for 8 years. I mean, he's going on a second term, so it'll be 8 years when it's all said and done. I mean, 8 years of her leadership has been under somebody who doesn't look at her country as legitimate. He says S-hole countries about Haiti. He looks at her and says, filthy, disgusting, dirty Somali. We heard him say that. So when he looks at her country and where she's from like that, of course she's going to criticize that and also say, I'm an American, but you need to have some kind of empathy and open-mindedness about how you enforce immigration, because now you're punishing an entire country based on the actions of a select few.
Yeah, I would just, if I was her, I would evince some appreciation for all of the rights and entitlements that one has as an American.
Has she never done that, though? That's what Bill Maher's like overstating.
I never parsed all
That's
of
what I'm saying. It's an easy
know.
jab at somebody who you see is heavily critical of President Trump, but you see that President Trump is heavily critical of the same people also. Marjorie Taylor Greene is extremely critical of lawmakers, specifically in Congress, constantly in the last few months, coming at she says they're all pawns of President Trump and how they're failed.
Again,
so she's not happy. So she's not happy
She's
to
not
live
out
in America.
here saying America is a broken, racist, bad, colonialist.
So if she doesn't, she might not be using the word racist, but she said we're broken. We're failing Gen Z. She says that we're failing on health care.
Not we, the government.
Exactly. So if
by having policies that favor seniors at the expense of young people, that's what she's getting at.
And if Ilhan Omar
and I agree with her,
we have policies that favor migrants that are from places where people look like they're white, and we look at black countries and we call them S-hole, and we say disgusting and filthy, and we look at people that have study Islam, which is a beautiful culture, and say that they're bad. That's like, why is Islam bad? Like, people actually who study the Islamic faith are not criminals and killers. Like, that's what we don't understand. And we overanalyze, we indict an entire community of people looking into one ideal or looking into one location and say you're all bad, and that's where America has it wrong. I mean, I've literally spent time, because I have a travel show in UAE, and understood the Muslim culture, understood Islam, and spent time understanding this. And these people are some of the most peaceful people that I know. And the fact that we indict, and I know we're going on a different tangent, but it's just differences from what America sees as normal. And now we say that you're all bad, you're all criminals, and that's what we need to stop doing. So if she has to scream from the rooftop.
There's a lot of straw men here. I'm not saying they're all bad or they're all criminal or any of those things.
No, the president does, by saying things like filthy, disgusting, dirty, S-hole. Like, this is what he calls places like that.
Because their countries are not well run. Do you deny that? They have lower GDP, they have lower literacy rates, they have lower everything there. So we're being a little cautious about how much of the third world can enter this country at one time, because we don't want to import the values and the way civilization is structured there, because something we're doing was right and something they're doing was wrong. And we don't want it to become like, you must concede that. I mean, we're not taking unfair shots. These countries are worse places to live. I want them to become better places to live, which is why I favor trade and engagement with these countries that want to be pro-America and want to collaborate in business ventures and want to develop. They shouldn't be reliant on our aid forever, but there should be mutually beneficial economic arrangements that bring them along and that raise their GDP, that raise their standard of living, and then they have more democracy and they have more freedom of speech and they have more market capitalism and they have all the things that we want them to have, and we can benefit from their labor, and some level of immigration from their countries is fine, and I'm in support of it. More in support of it, I think, than most Republicans, but I'm in support of it. But we can't have there is concerns about our values being overrun by the values of people. And I don't have anything against most peace-loving Muslim people either, or the people of any faith, but we're talking about Europe is facing massive chain migration from the Middle East, from destabilized countries, partly destabilized because of wars we've had there that I was against, but there are concerns about importing terrorists and criminals who are disproportionately among their midst. That doesn't mean they're all terrorists and criminals and we should take none of them. It means we have to do a little bit of vetting. Is that wrong to do a little bit of vetting and say, are we making sure the people who are coming in here aren't people who want to destroy us and kill us? Yes. Like, that's what we're asking questions about. Because you talk about hate crime statistics and how, oh, it's more white supremacist gangs. The number one extremist category in the U.S. is Islamic extremism because of 9/11. So
the president's direct response to the fraud happening in Minnesota, which was widespread after the pandemic, not just Minnesota and not just Somali people, was to shut down access to Somali people to immigrate into this country. This is not a proper response.
Because they're disproportionate. Why is that not a disproportionate?
Because in Minnesota, which is the largest population of Somali people in our country in general, there was a widespread fraud. But across the country, if you look at fraud during the pandemic and afterwards, we can look at places like Ohio, we can look at other states, and fraud was rampant. So we should look at every single community then and say we're shutting down immigration everywhere, and not just look at Somalia and say, well, this country is the worst, the bad. You learned something bad from there, as opposed to them just being migrants that did something bad in the community because they saw an opportunity to take advantage, like everyone else, of the thousands of people that have been prosecuted after the pandemic that have taken advantage of our government. We didn't shut down access to every single person, every single place they immigrated from. We didn't look at how many migrants came from where.
I don't believe you. I don't believe you. Take this to its logical conclusion. Let's say we found out that the white supremacist violence, it's mostly prison gangs. Let's say that was all. It turned out those had been immigrants or recent immigrants from a particular region of Germany where there's some neo-Nazi or Argentina or wherever they all immigrated to, okay. And it turned out by a significant margin it's all from that country. Of course we should shut off immigration to that country.
No, I'm not indicting the whole country of Germany. I don't think that's the right way forward.
I think it's obvious that they would do that, and that would not be so wrong.
Well, to tie this all in a bow, I think that Bill Maher is overgeneralizing what Ilhan Omar does. I think she defends a place that she was born, but also by being a Congress member, you would think that most people are devoting their lives to pushing for things that they genuinely believe will make our country better. Whether you think Congress is effective or not, the fact that you go into a role like that, which is considered public service, I mean, she is committing her life to this country. And so the fact that you feel like she's always negative, well, she's equally as negative as Marjorie Taylor Greene. If you want to look at it like negative about the history versus negative about the right now, it's all about policies. Policies make our country what it is, and she's able to criticize them and shouldn't be condemned because she's overly critical of President Trump, who is extremely critical of pretty much everybody that doesn't agree with him. Trevor Noah took a shot at President Trump at the 68th Annual Grammy Awards. Let's take a listen.
Song of the Year. Congratulations, Billie Eilish. Wow. That is a Grammy that every artist wants, almost as much as Trump wants Greenland. Which makes sense. I mean, because Epstein's island is gone, he needs a new one to hang out with Bill Clinton. So, oh, I told you it's my last year. What are you going to do about it?
President Trump responded to Noah's jab, writing on Truth Social, the Grammy Awards are the worst, virtually unwatchable. CBS lucky not to have this garbage litter their airwaves any longer. The host, Trevor Noah, whoever he may be, is almost as bad as Jimmy Kimmel at the low ratings Academy Awards. Noah said incorrectly about me that Donald Trump and Bill Clinton spent time on Epstein Island. Wrong. I can't speak for Bill, but I have never been to Epstein Island nor anywhere close, and until tonight's false and defamatory statement, have never been accused of being there, not even by the fake news media. Noah, a total loser, better get his facts straight and get them straight fast. It looks like I'll be sending my lawyer to sue this poor, pathetic, talentless dope of an MC and suing him for plenty of money.
He took the time out. Political commentator Harry Sasson reacted to Trump's post, writing on X, quote, "It's 1 a.m. and Donald Trump is awake, furiously posting on social media about the Grammys. He says he's suing Trevor Noah for joking about him being on Epstein Island. What a snowflake. So much for free speech." It's giving crybaby. Like, don't watch the show if it's so boring and trash. He also, Trevor Noah, came at Bill Clinton, so it's not like oh, was Democrat or Republican.
It was
He came at everybody. He's a
defamatory statement.
he's a comedian. You know, it's equal opportunity comedy. I don't understand why Trump was going to get so panties in a bunch about this. So he needs to just.
Well, because probably a significant portion of the people at the Grammys, and the liberals all watching the Grammys, I can't imagine who else would watch the Grammys, think that Trump probably was on the island, even though there's no evidence of that.
Well,
so we're just concerned about, to use it, let's put this in democratic parlance, we're just very concerned about the spread of viral misinformation. And there's a lot of misinformation available online that experts have not vetted. And I'm just very concerned about people being allowed to say things that experts disagree with, and so that we'll have misinformation and our democracy will be misinformed. And that's what I'm concerned about.
I'm most concerned.
And we need legal action to prevent the viral spread of misinformation that is going to cause people to make voting choices that we disagree with and we are concerned about.
I'm most concerned about President Trump's ego. He hates that he can't dominate the conversation over there at the Grammys, and that anybody's talking about him. He always talks about how negatively
mental health of misinformation is something
how
experts
negatively
say
he's
is a very
covered on
serious
all these
problem for our
platforms.
democracy.
He hates that he's being tied to Epstein, even though that was his former good friend. It just is what it is. I'm sorry. Make better friend choices.
Misinformation causes.
You got to make better friend choices. Also, he's trying to intimidate comedians. He's trying to intimidate everyone that he doesn't like, from Don Lemon on, in any part of the media. He's suing media companies. He literally does not want anyone to say anything negative about him. He doesn't want Kamala Harris to take a breath.
He doesn't want them to say untrue.
He doesn't want Kamala Harris to take a breath in her statements. Otherwise, it's somehow defaming him. He has a problem. He's collecting millions of dollars. He's suing the Wall Street Journal. Because of a birthday card he allegedly wrote. It looks just like his signature to Epstein, saying happy birthday about all their secrets that they have, allegedly. He's suing the Wall Street Journal for that. Everything. You can't sue your way out of being friends with Epstein. That's your friend. Own it up. You said you distanced from him a long time ago. That's fine. But that still was your friend. You can't erase history. And we're going to talk about this later. But all your friends that try to erase history and pretend
He's just asking
like
that people
the
don't say
friendship is different.
untrue things about that friendship. The friendship, which, yes, Jeffrey Epstein was a member of Mar-a-Lago, and they interacted, and that came to an end after they had a falling out. This was years before.
Over Epstein taking a young girl from Mar-a-Lago. That was allegedly what the falling out was about.
Maybe.
And Trump understood that his friend was doing these
Right, so he
things.
disassociated from him.
Maybe he should have went to the police instead of disassociated. Maybe he should have said, oh, he's trying to take underage women to some mysterious island.
I don't think he had evidence that there were underage women being... again, this is involving Virginia Giuffre, who was, I believe, not underage at the time of these.
Well, if the president felt that unsavory towards him, he could have called in tips like the rest of the thousands of tips that were called into the FBI. He didn't have to say his name.
Okay,
we know
so
that
now he didn't go
he
to
could
the...
have told...
He didn't
go to the
call
furthest
the
extent of the
police.
law.
So that's the...
He can go to the... If he felt his friend was so...
You know what? Hang him. Hang the man.
I don't know. If my friends are committing crimes, I might be snitching. I don't know. So
as I said, Lindsay and arson. Who knows?
You keep saying that, but if there's no proof,
I'm just asking questions. Some of the biggest names in music showed up for the 2026 Grammy Awards on Sunday in what ended up being a highly politicized show. Yesterday, we discussed President Trump threatening to sue Trevor Noah over the jokes the comedian made about him while hosting the Grammys. Jokes such as they were.
Several award winners also took the time to call out the Trump administration in their speeches, with the main focus being on ICE. Here was Billie Eilish accepting the Song of the Year award for her song, Wildflower.
As grateful as I feel, I honestly don't feel like I need to say anything, but that no one is illegal on stolen land. Yeah, it's just really hard to know what to say and what to do right now, and I feel really hopeful in this room, and I feel like we just need to keep fighting and speaking up and protesting, and our voices really do matter, and the people matter, and ICE is all I want to say.
Eilish's speech was quickly going viral and, of course, denounced by the right. Utah Senator Mike Lee wrote, any white person who does a public stolen land acknowledgement should immediately give his or her land to the Native Americans. Otherwise, they don't mean it. Also, I'm pretty sure they don't mean it.
But the big star of this year's show was Bad Bunny, the Puerto Rican artist who won multiple awards, including Album of the Year. It was the first time in Grammy's history that a Spanish-language album won the top prize. Here was some of his speech for another award that he won earlier in the night.
Before I say thanks to God, I'm going to say, eyes out. We're not savage, we're not animals, we're not aliens, we are humans, and we are Americans.
Bad Bunny is also getting ready to perform at the halftime show of the Super Bowl in just a few days. He has drawn scrutiny from the MAGA crowd for his repeated criticisms of Trump. Last year, he declined to perform in the continental United States during his world tour, saying he was concerned that ICE raids would put his fans in danger.
Some conservatives suggested they will boycott the halftime show, and Turning Point USA has even put together an alternative show featuring Kid Rock as the headliner. Republican influencer and former Marine Jason Nelson says on X, if the NFL doesn't immediately switch the halftime show from whoever Bad Bunny is, they will see the largest viewership drop in Super Bowl history. The boycott will be bigger than the game itself. Heck, I'll boycott anyone who advertises. Change the show, or we change the channel. Bet you're going to be flipping over from Bad Bunny to Kid Rock.
I will be, I would have to fervently stick with Bad Bunny on that. Also that thing of like whoever Bad Bunny is, like at this stage, there aren't many people who genuinely don't know who he is.
Even, he has permeated even my awareness
there
at
we
this
go.
point, which of music is very low. But
Robbie Suave, professor of pop.
Yes.
Not generally something that's said.
Look, award shows, we're used to what I would describe as kind of empty and hollow statements about political topics from, oh, keep fighting, keep protesting. Well, okay, what are you doing? It's fine. But, that's par for the course. I'm with Ricky Gervais, who in my favorite award speech of all time said, nobody wants to hear from you. You've spent less time in school than Greta Thunberg. Get your award, thank your God, and get off the stage. Love that guy. But, they're going to do what they're going to do. It's fine. I think the comment, no one is illegal on stolen land, deserves some additional scrutiny. What does that mean? That means no crimes can be committed because the land doesn't, the sovereign people are not sovereign over the land. I think stolen land is a kind of ridiculous concept because, well, who did they steal it from? The native people didn't have it for all of human history until we arrived here, but, there I go again.
So let me defend Billie Eilish. No surprise that you and I disagree on this one, I think. Firstly, someone who has a platform is entitled to use that platform to express whatever views they wish. And of course, people are entitled to challenge that view. The stolen land thing, I certainly don't take that as meaning no law. There can be no law anywhere in a nation that is constructed on stolen land. I think she's making the argument, albeit in fairly combative terms, that the nature of the United States is that we are all immigrants or descended from immigrants unless we're indigenous people. Furthermore, there was a story last month that I tweeted and various others did too, where several Native Americans originally from the Sioux tribe were detained by ICE. Now, the bitterness of the irony there in having people whose land was unarguably stolen from them detained by immigration authorities, that's pretty wild stuff. Now, there's a whole separate point of it, land acknowledgements, blah, blah. Billie Eilish is entitled to make her feelings known. I thought that the rest of her speech, which we played there, about the importance of people raising their voice, is important in the current climate, and so good for her. Is the short version.
I just don't. If your view is that we stole the land from some group of people, that's a concern that people who have about immigrants now, or that our culture is under assault, or if that is the worldview that it was stolen, then I think that would give credit to the things people are complaining about now that I mostly reject, because the land does not natively belong to anyone, and it is ours by right of conquest at this point.
Not to go all Marlon Brando or Russell Means on you here, but white settlers removed indigenous people from the land with enormous violence and enormous mendacity, and all of that.
As assuredly as the natives removed the natives they took the land from previously. They didn't all just live in some idyllic little, not that you're saying this, but I do encounter this idea on the left, a wrong idea that they were just all holding hands and frolicking and eating a little bit of bison, and everything was fine. And then we came here and we introduced warfare to them is a very romanticizing the native of not just America, but of the history of human beings is a history of warfare and displacement and slavery and genocide in every continent and in every corner of the world.
There can be a romanticization of some things, and in general, taking the indigenous element out of it. I mean, sometimes there's a sort of romanticization of impoverishment generally. I mean, that I think goes on quite a lot. That being said, I mean, if we actually looked at the statistics demonstrating the appalling levels of impoverishment, social dysfunction, etc., among indigenous people in this country, I mean, they're catastrophic. They are obviously a people or peoples who have been treated just with complete callousness and disregard. Now, is Billie Eilish in the best position to make that argument? That's a different debate. But the abhorrent treatment of indigenous people is just a historical fact.
I certainly don't object to, and in fact, in favor of what can be done for these people now without we can't go back and reverse history. What can we do to make? Native Americans are obviously should be and are citizens and are part of our country and should be whatever we can do to. I mean, whatever we can do to help disadvantaged. I'm less about it having a specific race or cultural context, but whatever we can, what we owe to people who are truly poorly off. Yeah. Although I don't know if I would grant them, the casino rights that they have are rights I would extend to all people, because I don't think gambling should be illegal or tightly regulated.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is valid. This is, of course, a big discussion in this country in all sorts of ways. I certainly think it is valid to argue for government policies that in some way ameliorate or expiate the injustices of the past when those injustices are completely clear.
Well, if it goes into the preferential, hiring and admissions, I tend to oppose them, although I will concede that was the redressing past grievances was the reason for instance, university-based affirmative action, racial preferencing was we have done bad things to people of color and we're making up for that. The interesting thing about the history of court jurisprudence on this issue for the last 20 years is basically the Supreme Court said you can't do that. You can do racial-based preferencing because diversity is an advantage for you, which to my mind was is not as compelling, honestly. And I know some people on the left who feel that way too. Making up for past harm was a more solid reason for doing this, whereas the diversity framing is kind of
a bit nebulous.
It's like pseudo-scientific and nebulous. But was then the argument that all these administrators had to admit, well, yes, of course, when we said we were doing this to remedy past harms, what we really meant is we benefit from a student body that is exactly 7% this and 19% this and 3% this, which no one really believes, and it's why the whole thing eventually collapsed.
Right. I mean, I think that, in general with these issues, there has to be, I think, some recognition that the legacies of past injustices do continue in various forms. And so there are still very wide racial inequities in this country. There's still an issue where people who have traditionally been frozen out of positions of influence or have failed to get earned promotions or be elevated in the way their abilities would entitle them to, then creates a perpetuating effect where nebulous terms are used like, oh, we don't think that person would fit in there. And it's actually just sort of subtle racism or subtle prejudice by another name. One thing I would say is economic circumstances amputated from race tend not to be counted in that process as much as I think they should be. I mean, somebody from a very impoverished part like Appalachia or something I mean, that's an obviously disadvantaged community, even when it's a white community, and that's, part of injustice too.
President Trump is taking aim at writer Michael Wolff following the latest Epstein files documents dump from the DOJ. The president did accuse Wolff of conspiring with Epstein to try to destroy his political career. Wolff does appear in the documents that were published last November, and he appeared to be acting as Epstein's unofficial advisor and publisher ahead of the 2016 election, even went so far as to call Epstein the, quote, bullet that could end Trump's 2016 bid. Trump addressed Wolff's alleged conspiracy on Air Force One over the weekend, even indicating the latest document dump proves he did nothing wrong. Take a listen.
It looked like this guy Wolff, who's a writer, was conspiring with Epstein to do harm to me. And I didn't see it myself, but I was told by some very important people that not only does it absolve me, it's the opposite of what people were hoping, the radical left. That Wolff, who's a third-rate writer, was conspiring with Jeffrey Epstein to hurt me, politically or otherwise, and that came through loud and clear. So we'll probably sue Wolff.
Meanwhile, Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche said that over the weekend, the federal officials are unable to investigate various tips that the FBI received about Trump's alleged involvement with Epstein.
Now, DOJ emails show that those tips were compiled as information from, quote, Trump accusers back in August. The documents show the FBI contacted many, but not all, of the initial callers, with some tipsters not leaving their information. Blanche told CNN's Dana Bash that it's because of some of those tips were anonymous and relied on secondhand information that they have been unable to investigate them. Let's take a look.
It's not about President Trump. It's about a ton of people, multiple people that were, quote, in the Epstein files. And what I think folks will see when they review the materials we released is that there have been hundreds of calls made to the FBI where allegations are made by either anonymous individuals or people who are very quickly determined to not be credible, whether it's the nature of what they're saying or the fact they won't provide any information or corroboration. And that's part of the Epstein files.
Blanche also pointed out that they received tips regarding other prominent politicians and famous people. As of Sunday morning, the list of tips regarding the president was no longer available on the DOJ's publicly available database. A DOJ spokesperson also said in a statement Friday that there was no validity to tips regarding Trump, saying, quote, this production may include fake or falsely submitted images, documents, or videos, as everything that was sent to the FBI by the public was included in the production that is responsive to the Epstein Files Transparency Act. Some of the documents contain untrue and sensationalist claims against President Trump that were submitted to the FBI right before the 2020 election. To be clear, the claims are unfounded and false.
Yeah, what is the Trump obsession? Trump is not impugned by what's going on here. So can we just move on from that aspect? Now, there is interesting stuff coming out of these latest Epstein files, making available, including multiple people who said that they'd never been to the island. And there's now emails saying, hey, when am I getting my invite to the island? I can't wait to go, including Elon Musk, frankly. Is that? But we're just obsessed with Trump. Who cares? It's not Trump. Trump is not involved in this.
Well,
can we accept that and move on?
No, I think when.
Of course you can't.
Yeah, no, I think we have 1,800 times that man's name was mentioned. That's a lot. I mean, my name wasn't mentioned in there. Your name wasn't mentioned in there.
You're not the most important person on earth.
Well, neither is Trump to me. Yes. I think 1,800 people.
Well, you can live your truth, but Trump is the most important person on earth.
1,800 times mentioned. He was mentioned that many times. That means it's worth looking into. And you talk about this journalist. The journalist was not trying to just attack Trump. He literally was asking for that time in that back and forth with Epstein.
Well, Michael Wolff was trying to attack Trump.
Yeah, he's saying this would be the bullet to take him down because he was trying to convince Epstein, according to him, that he wants people to know the truth about Trump, so he should come forward with what Epstein knew. So he's like, just do what you want, say what you want, say it out loud.
Michael Wolff,
because your career is already ruined, your life is already ruined. Say the things out loud. That's what Michael Wolff says his intention was. There is plenty to say.
There's nothing to say, not about Trump.
I mean, we wouldn't be having this conversation if his name wasn't mentioned. And I'm of the thought process that we can go ahead and look into Bill Clinton too. I don't care. Everybody that's so closely tied to Epstein over and over again, and their names are being mentioned thousands of times. Let's look. I'm not biased in this way. People need to understand information about historically why this man was able to get away with so much. People want to understand what his foreign connections might be. People want to follow the money and see who paid him, how he got to such success. It makes no sense. And why he was dangling so many threats over President Trump's head. There's no threats my point is like, whether you think Trump is the most important man in the world or not, you can't dangle threats over somebody if they're completely untrue, right? If somebody dangled an untrue threat to you, you would be unbothered. You'd be like, say it out loud, right?
That's not true, because
Why?
anyone even tangentially mentioned in the same breath as Epstein suffers reputational harm. People have had to pay out to some of these victims who are not credible, who are subsequently demonstrated to not be credible, but you don't want the negative publicity and you don't want to go to trial, so you just pay them out. So there is ample reason to not want any of this, even if you're totally innocent, A. B, nothing is being suppressed. We're getting the information and it just doesn't have anything to do with Trump. Or frankly, the Clintons. The interesting part is the people who continue to talk to Epstein after he already goes down for sex crimes in the aughts and are still having correspondence with him in the 2010s. That includes Richard Branson. That includes Steve Bannon in a big way. Steve Bannon, Stacey Plaskett, messaging with Jeffrey Epstein right up until the end. I saw a 2-hour interview that Epstein did with Bannon. I'm not sure at what point, where they're talking about housing and stuff. Maybe we're going to address it in a bit. I don't know. That's all interesting, but Trump is just not. There's nothing to do with Trump.
What about the old adage that where there's smoke, there's fire? There's people that are mentioned 1 or 2 times, and yes, we're like, okay, these are uncorroborated claims. We're seeing Trump's name next to 13-year-olds. We're seeing Trump's name next to Ghislaine Maxwell bringing young girls to him, and him deciding what the next steps will be. That's what we're seeing in these latest released documents.
What if I said over and over again?
No, not over and over again.
There's no evidence that Lindsay is an arsonist.
Right, but
there's no evidence
45 people
Lindsay
call,
is an
if
arsonist.
45 people
Headlines,
call the Hill,
Lindsay and arson, unclear but is denied.
If 45 people call the Hill and say, hey, Lindsay burned something, then I might be an arsonist. That's what I'm trying to say, the smoke fire idea, right?
Or there's a bunch of people out to get
obsessed with me. We're obsessed that much with President Trump? I don't think so.
This is he's one of the most, he has enemies.
He actually has friends, and one of them were Epstein. Sorry to tell you that. That was his good friend. And even though he's distancing himself now, people are just saying, historically, if you did something gross, we're going to point it out. And if you didn't, then clear your name.
They've been trying. If they had it by now, it would have come out. They don't have it. They don't got it. There's no connection here for the bad stuff.
What's wrong with holding powerful people accountable? Could be Trump, could be Clinton, could be whoever. Let's ask the questions. That's what we like to do.
What's wrong with it for me is you and the people you're representing, or whose viewpoint you're representing here, will never be satisfied. They'll say, well, we just got to keep looking until we find something, even though there's nothing to find. That's my fear.